And our last episode was right before the trade deadline, and the Celtics did make a few moves. They have the new guy, Derrick White, and then Daniel Tice. What do you two think about those two respective moves? Start with Derrick White.
Well, Derrick White has been pretty much what the Celtics were really hoping to come away with in some way, shape, or form at the trade deadline. A multi-positional guy that can be a bit of a playmaker, can play good defense, and fits in with seamlessly with what they do game in and game out. And it doesn't hurt that his familiarity with this coaching staff, with the key players. There's a photo from Team USA where they've got Tatum, Brown, Smart, Derrick White. Oh, and some dude, Donovan Mitchell. He's also in the photo too. He's the one guy that's not on their final five that end games. That's another story for another podcast. But that image is a reflection of just his familiarity with the players. And I had a chance to talk to Will Hardy, Celtics assistant coach, who was in San Antonio, who was actually very hands-on with Derrick White when he came to the league. And
Gary does not want to hear what you have to say.
Clearly. Very familiar with Derrick White when he came into the league. In fact, he was the one that picked Derrick White from the damn Boston airport when he came to Boston. And he said the one thing about Derrick that people are going to like, and he said this before his first game, was that he's tough. He's quiet, but he's tough. He ain't no punk. He does not mind getting his nose in the middle. And when you look at the Celtics team, that's kind of what they're slowly but surely evolving into, a team that they may not be the most talented team on the floor every night, but they're going to compete. And I think that's the thinking that Brad Stevens had at the trade deadline. I'm not going to go out there and add guys that are going to automatically catapult us to Brooklyn or Miami or Milwaukee. But damn it, I can get some guys in here who can fight. Let me get some fighters in here. Guys that are going to allow us to compete with those top teams once we get to the playoffs. And that's what they have now. They got a team that can compete.
Well, I think Derrick White is a very good player, complimentary player. I thought he was solid in San Antonio. I would have preferred if they had given up Dennis for him as opposed to Josh Richardson, because I liked what Josh brought to the table. I liked what he was able to do, as coming off the bench and being that spark plug, hitting threes the other night. A couple weeks ago? No, but last weekend with 5 threes, in the game. So Josh was a productive player. I thought he was solid for the Celtics. I was a little sad for them that they had to sacrifice him. And then Romeo and the first-round pick, that's a lot for Derrick White.
And a pick swap.
Yeah, White needs to produce. I'm not saying he's not. He's had solid first 2 games. He likes to shoot. He shot a lot of three-pointers over the last 2 games. But he seems to have blended into the element. But I think what we're seeing with this deal is that Brad is like, hey, like the whole thing, like the clock is ticking for Peyton Pritchard. The clock is ticking for Aaron Nesmith because he done got Romeo up out of here. It just, I know like he's a prospect still, and I know San Antonio's probably going to work with him, get him stronger. Like he could be a player for this person. I'm talking about a great player. I don't think Romeo, for a good team, is probably an NBA starter unless he dramatically improves. But I do think he's a guy who can help them as a wing. And, I think the fact that Brad gave up a guy less than 3 years into his career just shows you, like, hey, you got to get it done in Boston. No more of this. We're not hanging on to you forever. We're going to admit our mistakes. And that's what other teams do. If the dude doesn't work out, you get him out. You get him out. I looked at the draft from Romeo's draft, 2019 draft, and Romeo is 41st in scoring from that draft, even though he was the 14th pick. Like 3.6 points a game. That's just – he didn't get it done. And listen, it was health. I don't think he was physically ready to play in the NBA. And I think, unfortunately, in this current, NCAA, NBA climate, every one and done dude, every dude who averages 10 points a game as a freshman thinks he's ready for the league. Yeah. And Romeo was one of those guys who thought he was ready to make the jump. He wasn't. He would have served himself better physically by probably spending another year or two in college because he just wasn't ready to handle it. And then he needed to learn how to play, learn how to be confident and all that. So I think that this move shows that Brad is about right now and Brad's about getting it done. And the fact is that Derrick White just signed a 4-year extension in December 20. So he has 3 more years left in his deal. So you got him there for a while. I think that's why San Antonio asked for so much, because he's a guy that under a contract like $4.70, so he's making that $17 million, which these days is a tradable contract, right? The Marcus Smart he got the Marcus Smart deal. So I think it was a good move, but I just think it shows, one, Brad doesn't think much of this draft because he traded their first rounder, and 2, he's tired of these mid-first round picks too. He's tired of the Neesmiths. He's tired of the Romeos. He's tired of these guys who he wants somebody to come in and can get it done right away. So I think it was a good trade, but I wish they wouldn't have to give up Richardson. If they had White and Richardson off the bench, oh boy, I think that would have been a great team.
Yeah, I mean, if you have those 2 guys, you're probably talking about a team that's going to crack the top 3 or 4 in the East, I think, if you got both of those guys. But I think he didn't really have a choice, I think, with Josh, because when you look at the different pieces that the Celtics were trying to dangle out there and with the assets they were trying to get in return, I just couldn't – for them to get a guy like Derrick White and get a guy like a big that can stretch the floor and can understand their system like Tice, there's no way you would have to give up both of those guys to do that. There's just no way. And having Daniel Tice back, which, as Gary knows, I'm a big DT fan. That's my guy. Shout out to Milo's dad, Daniel Tice. That's my dude. He's going to be a good. This is the thing you got to remember about Daniel.
I knew he was your guy. Like I did.
You did. Gary used to give me. I
was today years old
when you found that out.
Back in the day when we used to have access inside the locker room and we talked to guys, Gary used to give me grief because I would be talking with my guy Daniel all the time.
Okay.
Like when Daniel's wife had their son Milo, and I'm talking to him about that. Gary was giving me major ish about that, which is just Gary being hated.
Because it was something you reported or something that was a little like it was like.
Did you do a story on it?
I did like a note, maybe a tweet.
Big story about it. So.
Yeah, I wrote like 500 words on it. That's what I did.
Exactly.
No, but the thing we have to remember with Daniel though is that he's not replacing Schroeder. He's actually replacing Ennis. And when you look at what Ennis was giving you and you look at what Daniel Tice can give you, major upgrade. Now, speaking of Dennis, with Pritchard now kind of filling that slot, major downgrade. And to Gary's point, that's something that when the Celtics are looking at these open spots that they still have, I got to believe they're looking for someone who can frankly make shots. Because Pritchard running the offense has been problematic. His shot making just as problematic. He's basically been a shorter version of Neesmith without the hustle. And that's not good.